Less than 2 decades ago, the ground began to split open in Africa, with fractures opening up across different countries, even splitting a man's house into two. Since then, it's been obvious that Africa is undergoing a continental rift. Such a rift occurs when a continent is set to break into 2 or more. When this happens, new continents, islands, and oceans will be formed, and our world will never be the same again. Why is Africa splitting up? What is causing the land to be cut open? What is the implication on Africans and the world in general? Join us in this video as we discuss how Africa is splitting into 2 continents, and most people don't even know about it. In 2005, images and reports began to emerge of a continental rift happening in East Africa. A continental rift is a term given to situations where a continent seems to be breaking apart or separating into 2 or more. This is a normal occurrence everywhere in the world. In fact, every single continent in our world today came as a result of rifts and shifting of tectonic plates. To understand what's happening in Africa, you need to understand what happened hundreds of millions of years ago. Hundreds of million years ago, the planet Earth was just a singular solid piece of land surrounded by a single body of water. It was just one continent, called Pangaea, and one ocean, called Panthalassa. Over the next million years, the Earth's outer crust got heated and cooled and broke up and apart into what we see today. This is what led to the formation of continents, islands, oceans, and seas. Although it might look like the Earth is stationary, the Earth is actually in a constant state of movement and change. The Earth's crust, which is sometimes referred to as the lithosphere, is what you and I stand on every day. This lithosphere is made up of about 15 to 20 tectonic plates that are constantly moving apart or toward each other. These plates are the large land masses that form the different continents and islands. When you think of these plates, think of them as pieces of a cracked shell that lay on the extremely hot sea of melted rock inside our planet's core. These plates are closely joined to each other. Due to the scorching temperature of the Earth's core acting on the plates, these plates are constantly moving, sometimes towards or away from each other. This movement is referred to as plate motion or tectonic shift. Have you ever noticed how South America's east coast and Africa's west coast fit together when you look at a globe? They actually were once together. Different continents and oceans were formed when the enormous one continent split apart. According to NASA's Earth Observatory, the Somalian plate in the east is moving eastward away from the larger and older part of the continent, the Nubian plate. The Somalian plate is sometimes referred to as the Somali plate, while the Nubian plate is sometimes called the African plate. Interestingly, both the Somalian and Nubian plates are also moving away from the Arabian plate in the north. These plates all meet in the Afar region of Ethiopia, forming a Y-shaped rift system, according to the Geological Society of London. This separation of the Somalian plate from the Nubian plate is also known as the East African Rift. The East African Rift is a network of valleys that stretches about 2,175 miles long from the Red Sea to Mozambique. If the Somalian tectonic plate does detach itself completely from the larger Nubian plate, the result will be the splitting of the world's second largest continent in 2. This would be an exciting phenomenon for geologists and every other scientist, as there's been nothing close to this since South America and Africa were divided into different continents hundreds of millions of years ago. However, if it does happen, it cannot happen in our lifetime, as it would take about 5 to 10 million years for there to be a clean separation. A clean breakaway of the Somalian plate from the Nubian plate might not be the only possible scenario here. One possibility is having most of the Somalian plate separated from the rest of the continent. This partial separation will lead to the formation of a new sea between the 2 land masses. This new landmass will include Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and the eastern parts of Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and Mozambique. There is also the possibility of only eastern Tanzania and Mozambique separating. Countries that will benefit from this rift are those that are currently landlocked, like Ethiopia and Uganda. The introduction of a coastline from the emergence of a new ocean will improve their economy greatly with new opportunities for trade and production. According to Ken McDonald, a marine geophysicist and a professor emeritus at the University of California, Santa Barbara. The Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea will flood in over the Afar region and into the East African Rift Valley and become a new ocean, and that part of East Africa will become its separate small continent. Reports show that, although the rift is obvious to the eyes, it is not growing fast enough for there to be a complete rift. Right now, it's growing apart at about 1/4 of an inch every year. Ken McDonald further says that the rifting right now is very slow, about the rate that one's toenails grow. But how do these rifts form? Why it is still the subject of debate among geologists and geophysicists, one popular model has assumed dominance. The assumption is that there is an increase in the heat flow coming from deep inside the Earth, and this is causing what is called thermal bulges that can be seen in central Kenya and the Afar region of north-central Ethiopia. These bulges are easily identifiable on any topographic map as elevated highlands. As these bulges form, they stretch and fracture the outer brittle crust into a series of normal faults. Bulges, for most geologists and geophysicists, are caused by the heat exerted on the Earth's crust by mantle plumes that are under the continent. A mantle plume is an area under the Earth's crust where magma is hotter than surrounding magma. The heat from this extra hot magma causes the melting and thinning of the overlying crust, which causes the bulges to expand and fracture. This could also lead to widespread volcanic activity on Earth's surface above the plume. Usually, the stretching of the thermal bulges is often preceded by huge volcanic eruptions that flow over large areas. These eruptions often are exposed on the edges of the rift. Some geologists refer to these eruptions as flood basalts. In this kind of eruption, the lava erupts from along the fractures of the bulges instead of erupting at individual volcanoes. The lava then runs over the land as though it is water during a flood. One feature that is obvious in the ongoing rift in Africa is the presence of a rift valley. A rift valley is a lowland region that is formed when two tectonic plates move apart or rift. Rift valleys are often found on land and at the bottom of the ocean. In the ocean, they are created by the process of seafloor spreading. Rift valleys are different from river valleys and glacial valleys in that they are created by the movement of tectonic plates and not the process of erosion. Many rift valleys are part of triple junctions. This happens when three tectonic plates meet at about 120 degrees angles. When this happens, two arms of the triple junction often split to form an entire ocean. The third arm, a failed rift, sometimes called an Aulacogan, may become a rift valley. An example of this is the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is a result of a triple junction that started in what is now the Gulf of Guinea on the west coast of Africa. Two arms of a triple junction on the supercontinent Pangaea created the ocean, while the Aulacogan formed the rift valley known as the Benue Trough through what is now southern Nigeria. Sometimes rift valleys can also be found underwater. These often divide long mountain ranges and are called mid-ocean ridges. This is formed when tectonic plates move apart from each other at mid-ocean ridges. Magma from the mantle swells up and hardens as it contacts the frigid sea, forming a new oceanic crust at the bottom of the rift valley. In the northern mid-Atlantic ridge, the North American plate and the Eurasian plate are splitting apart at a rate of about 1 inch per year. Over tens of millions of years, the mid-Atlantic ridge has formed rift valleys as wide as 9 miles. In the Pacific Ocean, the East Pacific Rise has created rift valleys where the Pacific plate is separating from the North American plate, Cocos Plate, Nazca Plate, and Antarctic Plate. Typical of many underwater rift valleys, the East Pacific Rise is spotted with hydrothermal vents. These vents are created by geologic activities underneath the underwater rift valley, causing superheated water and fluids to be released into the water body. A rift valley close by and similar to the East African Rift is the Great Rift Valley. The Great Rift Valley is arguably the most well-known rift valley on the planet. This rift valley stretches from the Middle East in the north to Mozambique in the south. The Great Rift Valley is well known for its being geologically active, with volcanoes, hot springs, geysers, and frequent earthquakes. The East African Rift has two main branches, the Western Rift and the Gregory Rift. These two rift valleys are dotted by volcanoes, from the